Welcome to Walking the Earth. Today we're in Lumbini, Nepal, in the Terai region, at the top of the sacred garden, at the Japanese Peace Pagoda, the Shanti Stupa. This is built by a Japanese Buddhist organization that made a commitment many decades ago to build a certain number of stupas around the world to help to cultivate and establish world peace. Recently, I went to another Shanti Stupa at Pagoda, which is on top of a ridge, and this was where I got the best view of the Himalayan mountains while I've been in Nepal, because it's been so rainy with monsoon season. But that day, right above Pure Lake, I was able to see a number of massive peaks in the Annapurna range of the Himalayan mountains. So this Buddhist organization, it's connected to the Pure Land movement. And so there is a conceptualization that the world it goes through several different cycles, and golden ages down to dark ages, and then begins again. Currently, we are in a dark age according to their view, which is parallel to some of the Hindu traditions as well. So in this dark age, they say that it is very difficult to attain enlightenment and get to paradise based on one's own efforts, the way that Siddhartha Gautama, Shakyamuni the Buddha, did. He was able to seek truth and establish an ethical way of living and purify his mind and body to the point where he attained enlightenment. They say this is, and then many of his disciples attained enlightenment through his teachings. And then over time, there was a decline in Buddhism and in the world as people became more immoral, more caught up in delusion. And so it's more and more challenging to attain enlightenment now in the old way, through meditation, through studying the scriptures, etc. So in the Pure Land system, they have a conceptualization that there are these celestial Buddhas who have established pure lands, paradises, heavens, where if you have faith in them and their teachings and recite their names with total faith, that through the power of that celestial Buddha, that you can be reborn in a pure land, in a paradise where all the conditions will be met for you to more easily be able to attain enlightenment in that realm. You'll have all the conditions, everything that you need will be available. And this is not the case here. So there's this concept of self-power versus other power. So the other power is through faith in a celestial Buddha, in these various Pure Land realms. And this Japanese Buddhist organization is associated with, it derives from the Pure Land movement and goes through several iterations. So we see Pure Land expressed within the last flowering of Mahayana Buddhism in India. We see it in Tibet, it is present. In Central Asia, it was present. And then you can still find it in China and the Chinese diasporic communities in Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, in Thailand, and in Chinatowns around the world. People still practice Pure Land Buddhism. And then it spread to Korea, it spread to Japan. And through the Japanese expression, many immigrants went from Japan to the United States, particularly to Hawaii, where there's a large Japanese Buddhist community. And many of those Buddhists are Shin Buddhists or Pure Land Buddhists. So this group here, they are derived, their lineage is through the Pure Land movement. It's within the Mahayana expression of Buddha Dharma. And then there have been several iterations since Pure Land arrived in Japan, where it's gone through a number of different changes. Sometimes many people practice Pure Land and Zen together. And so it's not like they're diametrically opposed. Many people they might practice Zazen. They also might chant the names of the name or a mantra of the Buddha. Now, in this particular tradition, I believe it's derived from Nichiren Shonshu. And so they're very devoted, to the Lotus Sutra. So in the mantra that they recite it talks about it mentions the Lotus Sutra within their mantra, and they'll repeat this over and over again. You sometimes will see around these Shanti Stupas, there will be a little monastery and maybe a priest or two, and they will regularly, you will hear them beating on their drum and reciting, and then some of their devotees will be on pilgrimage and be reciting with them, and they'll do a little round in the area. At a location like this, at the Peace Pagoda, often they will have relics of the Buddha. And I'm not sure if they are buried in a casket underneath the stupa or if they keep them at the top in the, there's like a jewel bowl often placed at the top of the stupa. So we've got, here, this you can walk up the stairs, and pilgrims, what they will do is they will take off their shoes when they enter onto the sacred land, and they will walk up and they will walk clockwise around the stupa and make their way up to the top level that they can go. So you have the base of the stupa and the drum of the stupa, and then on top of that you'll have the heap of the stupa. That's what stupa means, is heap. It's related to the ancient mound building tradition that's spread all around the world. You will find in Japan, in North America, in Europe, all across Eurasia, across ancient India, and many other locations as well. And so these mounds, so this is basically a mound which symbolizes the womb, and it's also symbolizing the begging bowl of the Buddha, placed over the drum. Then over that you've got a cube, so there's a cube placed above that, and then there are different levels that sometimes symbolize levels of enlightenment. I'm not sure what they are called. I'm still learning these, but they remind me of electrical coils. There's something very, very almost electrical and energetic about a stupa design, which is quite interesting because the Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya, it has a lot of cogs, like there are these designs embedded within the entire structure, which is pyramidal, that are very mechanical and remind me of mechanical cogs. And then at the top you've got the checha, or the umbrella, which is a symbol of ancient royalty. And this is where there would be a bowl. There would often be flags up there and a bowl containing jewels sometimes. And then there's a pole that goes all the way from the top down to underneath the stupa, where the casket is typically buried with the relics of the Buddha. And there are different kinds of stupas. Some will hold the relics of a Buddha or an enlightened being. Some will hold scriptures or things that an enlightened being used, like a walking staff or a robe. A begging bowl might be buried underneath the stupa and be considered a tremendous treasure. And that's the treasure house down at the bottom. And so that pole that goes down is basically an axis mundi. It's a world pole, kind of like a maypole. And in many traditions, there is an axis point around which pilgrims circle, and in some of the Buddhist tradition they call this kora. There are a couple other names for it, but it's a type of ambulation around it, circumambulating around the sacred object, the sacred place, and it's clockwise within the Buddhist tradition, including here. Whereas, say, in the Bon tradition of Tibet and in the Muslim tradition, the circumambulation is the opposite direction. It's counterclockwise. And that would be considered to be very disrespectful at a Buddhist location or a Hindu location, because it's like going against the grain. It's going against the energy circuit. The same way, if somebody would go to the Kaaba and go clockwise around it, it would be problematic. It would be against the grain. So here you'll see people circling around, and you also have 4 different niches placed into, or almost like a mihrab, and they're placed within the stupa, within the heap, the mound portion of the stupa, and they are facing in the different cardinal directions, north, south, east, west, and they have statues of the Buddha at different stages of his life. So, for instance, there are 4 in the stories of the Buddha. Before he passed away, he said that there were 4 locations that devotees should go to and it would help them to attain, it would help them on their path to enlightenment and help them to attain paradise. And that would include the place where the Buddha was born, the place where he attained enlightenment. So where he was born is here at Lumbini. Where he attained enlightenment was at Bodh Gaya in Bihar, in northern India, where he first began teaching, turning the Dhamma wheel. That's at Sarnath, on the outskirts of Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh of northern India. And finally, where he passed away and attained Parinibbana. That is also in Uttar Pradesh at a place called Kushinagar or Kushinara. This is located a bit outside of Gorakhpur, and named after Guru Gorakhnath, who was associated with Mahayana Buddhism and then later became a tantric Hindu to attain enlightenment in the Shaivite tradition. So there are these four. So as you wander around, the pilgrim is going to be contemplating the different stages of the Buddha's life and how those teachings and lessons apply to themselves. You know, the lessons of suffering and struggle and life and death and impermanence and selflessness. So these are important for the pilgrims. You'll also notice railings all around it, and these are based on railings that are placed around the Shanti Stupa, if I'm remembering correctly. Now, the Shanti Stupa is in Madhya Pradesh, and it was built by Emperor Ashoka 2,300 years ago. And it has relics of a couple of the main disciples of the Buddha. And so these railings, you will find them at Shanti Stupa and other ancient stupas. And they often would have had other designs imprinted within them. So this design incorporates, it represents continuity with earlier stupa designs within the Buddhist world. And by the way, before we draw this to a close, stupas are not the monopoly of Buddhists. Although we most know the stupa from the Buddhists, and the Buddhists have preserved it, it is an ancient tradition that goes back all across Eurasia and beyond, like I mentioned. And the Jain tradition or Jaina tradition also used to have a lot of stupas as well. Like not long ago, there was an archaeological dig done at Mathura, and in Uttar Pradesh near Agra, and they're very famous for their museum there. And this is a place that the Buddha had gone and spent time, but ultimately wasn't a big fan of that area, so I don't believe he returned a second time. But so they found an old stupa there, and you will find examples of, I think there's also by Takshila, by Islamabad in Pakistan, you will find really amazing ancient Buddhist ruins. I think it's a World Heritage Site. But it also includes some Jaina ruins that also depict their old stupas, if I'm remembering correctly. So let's go ahead and draw this to a close. But this is the Shanti Stupa at Lumbini in Nepal's Terai region on the border of India. We're just a few kilometers away from India, from this location. Also, you've got some guardian lions here. Lions, Asiatic lions, are often guardian statues in front of a stupa in many places and Buddhist places of worship. You'll find this all across many different Asian religions, but not just in East Asia or Southeast Asia or South Asia, but you also find that the Asiatic lion used to be very much depicted all across Eurasia and all the way out to Greece and Persia. So we'll go ahead and draw this one to a close, but everybody be peaceful.